You know something though, Stan? I really think you ought to buy this Buick. I think you ought to buy it today, right now. You want to know why? Because this Buick is you. The color is you. Look at it. This is your car. Stanley Dwoski is Buick Centurion convertible. Now, I know what you're thinking, Stan. You're thinking, can I afford to buy a car like this? Huh? Am I right? Seriously, Stan, you can't afford not to buy a car like this, and I'm going to make it easy on you. When you add this whole thing up, taking into account inflation rate, insurance savings, gas savings, ease, and comfort, you're going to come out $10,000 ahead after making this deal. Well, the prestige alone of owning a Buick Centurion convertible can't be measured in terms of dollars and cents. Am I right?
Kurt Russell playing a car salesman, doing his best to lure in a customer. That's from the 1980 comedy Used Cars. Now, clearly a lot has changed in the used car market since then, but negotiating a good price has not. And that might be of particular importance to BC drivers because according to a new retail report, this province has the most expensive used cars in the country. Here to talk about that, we have Clutch CEO Dan Park. Clutch is a Canadian online car buying platform that published this report. Dan, hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Can you give us sort of the overview of the discrepancy here? How expensive are BC cars compared to other provinces?
So in our report, we showed that BC cars are about $3,600 more expensive than the national average. But it's important to look a little bit deeper into that data. So that data is for cars that are 2015 or newer and less than 200,000 kilometers. So these are generally later model, high quality vehicles. And the thing about the British Columbia market is that one, it's highly skewed towards SUVs and trucks, which generally skew higher in terms of price. The East Coast prefer sedans, which are lower in value. And so when you look at that average, these SUVs and trucks lift the average. And then secondly, higher incomes in BC also make cars more expensive. And then lastly, just the quality of vehicles in British Columbia is higher given the milder climate. And if you go out east, the harsher winters and the road salt really make an impact on the value of the vehicle.
Aha. Yeah, I was going to ask you about climate because I know that salt can be cruel, can't it?
That's right.
Now, there was a financial newsletter by Wealthsimple that highlighted your study recently. It said, if you and a friend drove from Vancouver to Halifax and you spent about $3,800 on gas, 10 nights in a hotel, and an out-of-province inspection to buy the average price used vehicle, you would still come out more than $4,000 ahead. I know we're all doing the math there. 10 nights in hotels? I don't know. Is that really true?
Yeah, I don't think that's a little bit misleading. I mean, there's a little bit of an element of higher priced vehicles in BC, but certainly you're looking at every used car is quite unique, given that the condition can differ, the features differ, and so it's really hard to compare perfectly apples to apples. But as I said, the quality of vehicles in BC is generally higher because of those conditions. And then again, the mix of vehicles. So if you drive from BC to Ontario and you try to look for example, a sedan, sedans are only about $2,500 more expensive in BC than the national average. And so, after all that work, you probably wouldn't come out on top, and you might probably be getting a slightly lower quality vehicle, given that a 2015 used sedan would probably be of slightly lower quality than the comparable 2015 sedan in BC.
Now, this is data from your used car pricing report for August. It's interesting. That report does note that prices dropped this summer. Do we know why that is?
Yeah, so we've kind of, if you zoom out, so what's happened is that prices were quite high earlier last year. And so the average price of a used vehicle nationally was about $34,000 at the beginning of 2024, so January 2024. That came down throughout that year and hit a trough of $31,500. And so since then, we've climbed back up to about the same level as early last year. And so although prices have increased for the last several months, July was the first small dip that we saw. And that's really a function of the lingering impacts of the pandemic. And so back in 2020 and 2021, there was about 10 million cars that just weren't produced as a result of supply chain disruptions and chip shortages. And so we call that the missing generation of vehicles. And so today there's just fewer of those 40 to 5-year-old used cars on the road. And so that pushed up prices. And what you're seeing now is a normalization of that to getting to levels that are, probably more reasonable, still higher than the pandemic, but more reasonable vis-a-vis the last few years.
Right. I remember what happened during the pandemic. So bottom line, if people want to score a good deal without driving across the country to find a car, what would you say are some tips to how to do that?
Yeah, no, hopefully people aren't buying cars in the same way as they were in 1980s. Today, the buying process has been significantly modernized. We're hoping to lead the way around that. Our buying process is very similar to an Amazon-like experience. There's fixed pricing, there's full transparency around the condition of the vehicle, Carfax report available on every car. And so when I talk to consumers and recommend what they should do, the best thing they can do is a lot of research. The average Canadian will put anywhere between 10 to 16 hours of research before buying a car. And today there's just so much information online. And so there's really 5 things to look out for when you're buying a car. The first is the price of that vehicle, which just seems relatively obvious. The second, though, is your trade-in value. And so many times you'll walk away from a transaction thinking you got a great deal on the car, but maybe you really got it taken advantage of on your trade-in. And so you have to look at the overall transaction, and the trade-in value is, if you're trading in a car, is a big factor there. The third is financing terms. And so, there's often times when you walk in and, you say your budget is $600 and that car magically becomes $600.
Dan, I'm going to jump in here. Can you get quickly to 4 and 5? We got to.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's the first. That's the third. The fourth is the insurance and warranties that you're looking at, and the fifth is the vehicle history and the quality of that vehicle. So
thank you. We appreciate your time this morning. Dan Park, the CEO of Clutch. Clutch is an online used car sales platform.